Well, hello, this is Denise Miller, and we are here to speak about the next letter in our acronym special. It is the letter E, and we're here to speak about setting emotional goals. Now, before we go any further, I'd like to ask you to please be sure to hit the thumbs up or the heart or the like if you generally like the content that I present to you. And then also to please hit the subscribe and the notification so that you'll know when I post a new video. But back to our special acronym. The first letter was spiritual goals. The second letter was P for physical goals. And then today's letter is E for emotional goals. Now you might think, what place does emotional or does having an emotional goal or a set of emotional goals fit into my personal and professional growth? Well, you cannot be an effective leader unless your emotions are engaged. Now, that doesn't mean that you cry easily or that you yell and scream when you get angry, but it does mean that you are connected to your own emotions and that you can recognize the emotions of others. And also that you can get through some of the difficult leadership times with your emotions intact. Now, it helps with team dynamics. When you are on an even emotional keel, it helps to make your team and you ultimately an overall success. Really, to lead well, you do have to think of the emotions, your own emotions and the emotions of the members of your team. Think Undercover Boss. For those of you who remember that program, what the undercover bosses ultimately did at the end of the program always was something that engaged emotions. Those bosses were not cold, they were always very, very in tune with the plights and the difficulties of their employees. Why? Because they had emotional goals and they were paying attention emotionally. As a leader, you're not supposed to be some cold, hard person who's always about the bottom line. You do have to care for your team. When you care well for your team will care well for your clients. Never forget that. Now, I have seven, because we all know I'm all about the sevens. I have 7 areas where you can look into to develop emotional goals. The first one is your own self-awareness. How aware of you of how you're feeling and how your emotions are being affected on any given day by any situation. That is totally, totally key. If you don't know where you are, you certainly can't guide anybody else to a better place. The second is to have empathy. When your employees or fellow team members are going through something, whether it's a death in the family, some great loss because of a disaster, an illness, or perhaps a child out of control, you really do have to be empathetic. You have to understand that they're going through a hard time. And sometimes you have to walk with them through those difficulties. The third thing is resilience. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from failure, to be able to bounce back from things that are hard, that really give you a gut punch and end you up on the side of the room winded. You've got to be able to step up and bounce back. That is resilience. The next thing is adaptability. Now, it almost seems the same as resilience, but it really isn't. Adaptability is when you can change to meet a situation. You develop flexibility. You're able to respond to different kinds of issues. Perhaps you're able to respond to a fellow teammate or a teammate who reports to you who is somewhat emotionally out of control. But it's important to be adaptable, to not always lead the same way all the time, never changing. You have to be able to kind of bend to the circumstances And the next is boundaries, because while you do have to be able to bend to the circumstances, you do have to have a set of boundaries, a set of lines that you won't cross, a set of tracks, if you will, that you run on in terms of how you deal with people. Learning how to set those healthy boundaries, to say no when you need to say no, to be flexible when you're able, is really important. And mindfulness is the next. Mindfulness is being fully aware of where you are, what you're doing, how you're feeling, the temperature of the room, being able to not respond to the temperature of the room by joining it, but when necessary, being able to change the temperature of the room by your behavior. You can only do that if you're aware of the temperature in the room. So mindfulness is what's next. And then number 7 is positive relationships. It is so very important that you have positive relationships with the people you lead. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be everybody's friend and you have to go out for coffee every Saturday or go out for cocktails every Friday night after work. But it does mean that you get along with them, that you have a cordial relationship, that when you're aware that they're going through a hardship or a difficulty, that you, at the very least, ask how things are, and whenever reasonably possible, that you extend yourself to help. It means that you offer a compliment where a compliment is due, and it means that you have the difficult conversations in love, but that you have them when a correction is needed. So, those are my 7 tips to making sure that you have good emotional goals, that you set good emotional goals. Because remember, again, leadership is a privilege. Everyone deserves to be led well. And one of the ways that we do lead is leading well out of good emotional goals. Thank you so much for listening. Remember to hit the thumbs up or the heart, subscribe, and I will see you next week with the C in our acronym special.